Okay, this is the official start of the March first Planning Commission meeting. We'll start with a roll call to determine a quorum, and we'll start down at the end.
Cheryl Remy Hunt.
Jenny Sisson, Carol Hannah.
Drew Holloway.
Okay, we have a quorum, and we do need to approve last month's minutes. And if anybody has had, everyone's had a chance to look at that.
I'll make a motion to approve the February 1st, 2023 minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. None opposed, those have passed. We don't have any old business. So our new business is looking at the UDO amendments that we have in an Excel file. And Hannah, you're just gonna walk down through them and we're gonna talk about them?
Yeah, it's been a while since we've done one of these running lists of amendments of mine, but, okay, so first one, the town is looking to possibly get extraterritorial jurisdiction, which is basically a 2-mile radius around town where we can utilize our development standards. It's only in unincorporated areas, but according to our attorney, the first thing we need to do is have it in our code that should that ever happen, it would use these standards. So you can see the language there. It's on pretty much like the first page in the jurisdiction section. Right now, it just says the town of Pendleton jurisdiction. So I just opted to add some additional language there to speak to that.
Is that something that's going to happen or?
It's granted by the county. We actually have a meeting with them tomorrow. So they're the ones that decide whether or not it happens. And, you know,
And the town council would also have to accept it.
what Jeff, we didn't hear you.
The town council would also have to agree to it.
Okay.
So it takes two tango on that.
Yeah, okay. So
Any-
this,
Anything on that one? Any comments? No? Anything else? Okay. Number 2, downtown business zoning, the land uses. We have conditional use for upper floor dwellings. This is a pretty typical use for a downtown business. I think it should probably be a permitted use. It's already existing and we've not had any major issues with it. If any new units that go in for residential on upper floors have to fit all of our standards, which is minimum 500 square feet. And then any other sort of electric, water hookups, things like that, they have to be structurally sound. But that's probably something where it might be better to just remove that extra red tape of getting a conditional use as long as it fits our
it would have
standards.
to go to BZA
Yes,
and this.
right
is-
now it has to go to BZA. I'm
Yeah.
suggesting removing that
Yeah.
permitting by right.
And that's just for a new build then.
No, it would be like, it would be any existing building or a new build. So if someone wants to, like the A.B. Taylor building, if you wanted to put units, housing units above those on the second floor only, just permitting that by right instead.
But the ones that are already existing
Yeah,
are
they're great.
grandfathered in.
Yes, yes.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah. I think that's.
And for
Especially
most of
the
these, that was the original intent
It was.
100 years ago.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
most of these were built with, shopkeeper up top and then shop down below.
It seems like unnecessary steps.
Yeah.
For the, involve the BZA on that piece
Yeah,
of it.
just some red tape removal.
Yep.
On the BZA.
Uh-huh.
Not
But, to make things just
Sure.
as friendly as possible without being
Well, I think,
overly restrictive when
Yeah.
unnecessary.
I would think we'd want to encourage that. anyway,
Yeah,
To have,
I would too.
to have nice,
Some units down here, absolutely.
Does it go hand in hand with what's below? So if you if you are utilizing the building below, do you automatically take charge of what's above? Or is it still whoever's leasing the property?
It would be whoever's leasing it, yeah. Okay, so kind of, these next few ones are kind of all the land use matrix and then the zoning tables. So number 3, downtown business does not permit by right or conditional use a sit-down restaurant without alcohol. So
That's an oversight.
oversight, if I had to guess. So any
Yeah.
comments on that one? Okay.
No, that's good.
And then in that same breath, sit-down restaurant with alcohol is by conditional use only in downtown business. Again, that's a typical use for a downtown area. We already have those kinds of uses as well. Haven't caused any major snafus or anything like that. So I move to permit that by right.
Why do you think that we had it that way to begin with? Do we want to make sure we were
Well,
controlling?
I tried to do some digging and I talked to some members of the steering committee and a few members of this board and
Mhm.
nobody could really say, that wasn't something that stuck out. I know something that did was things like, vape shops or the adult use shops.
Mhm.
Those are the kinds of things we definitely wanted to prohibit. So I'm almost just kind of wondering if, it just,
I'm just trying to say
Oversight.
too, if we wanted to make sure we had eyes on it, a
yeah.
set of eyes, even if it's just to make sure it was going to be appropriate.
Mhm.
I don't remember discussion
Yeah.
on that. It could have been one of those, it was a 350-page document. It could have been one of those
Yeah.
boilerplate
Yeah.
items when
Yeah.
a consultant constructs
Yeah.
things and then they go in and modify and
I think there's a few things like that in here where until you use it in practice, you're not looking at that or for it. And there's just so much text in there.
And there were so many other things.
Yeah.
Warranted a lot of discussion.
Yeah.
I can't see any negative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And too, you gotta think, there's only so many liquor licenses available anyway. So. Okay, all right. This neighborhood business, so this is kind of like if we were to build kind of a new downtown spot. It would kind of have the shop on the bottom, some living up top, mixed use, multi-use, stuff like that. It's kind of just like downtown business, but all new buildings. And those are typically done not just as one building. So if someone were to come in and redevelop something near downtown, they would probably use the zoning designation. So this is another one that is a conditional use to allow a restaurant with alcohol. Again, those are the kinds of uses that you might see in a neighborhood business district. So that's something I think we could probably consider for allowing as permitted.
So again, we're saying it only allows a restaurant. I'm just thinking if we would get some development out on I-69, in the areas where maybe we've got some mixed use and some retail and some business.
Yeah.
Would that be different? Would we want to? I'm just trying to think if that would cause us to want to look at that differently than if it was something downtown.
Well, when it comes with living and retail, just because it's not in our downtown kind of historic, you're probably still gonna find places with alcohol.
Mhm.
And like the downtown business, both of these places allow microbreweries and liquor stores by right. So, there is the serving of alcohol in some way, shape, or form. It might just not be with food at a restaurant as it sits right now. So again, there's kind of some red tape
Yeah.
that we might not need to necessarily have in place. If it does become an issue, we can always go back and switch it back. But I think, again, that amount of liquor licenses that are available is probably the biggest hurdle for folks.
Someday though, maybe there'll be some available.
I hope.
Yeah.
So, any issues with allowing that by right? All right, so heavy business, HB, commercial use, so sit-down restaurant without alcohol and adult-oriented businesses. So our table in Appendix A says permitted for both of these, or excuse me, the tables in Chapter 2, the zoning district tables, shows that both of them are allowed, but the appendix is missing them. They're just gray boxes. which means not allowed at all. So, and it's been like this since the very first copy of our UDO. Again, I don't know if that was an oversight or which one should we go by?
I know we had a lot of discussion.
Mm-hmm. I
on
know.
that.
I think the sit-down restaurant without alcohol is probably fine to permit by
Mhm.
right. The adult-oriented businesses, you might want to mark as conditional use instead of permitted as it is right now.
Mhm.
That would prevent them just from coming in
Mhm.
without having to. go
Without
forward.
going before the board.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like that.
yeah, but I don't see why a sit-down restaurant without alcohol would be,
It's
Would
it's
be-
missing from the matrix table.
yeah.
Yeah, I have no problem
Okay.
with the restaurant piece.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we can use the restaurant piece as permitted, and then the adult-oriented businesses as conditional use.
Okay.
Okay, so then
Yes.
that'll change it in both the tables in chapter 2 and the land use matrix. Okay, excellent. So, next one I have for that, and I promise it's the last one. In the chapter 2 HB table, all of the conditional uses listed there, which I have them in parentheses here, are permitted by right in the land use matrix table at the end of the document. Except one. It's the mini warehouse, that's conditional, and that one's correct in both tables. So should we consider all these uses permitted, like the land use matrix says, or switch the land use matrix to match the chapter 2 table? So you have auction house, gas station, auto repair, car wash. Looking at these things, they seem pretty typical for a heavy business. I feel like those should be permitted. None of them are too wild.
Are they permitted in any other zoning?
Yeah, most of these are permitted in general business. There might be like towing, I don't think is allowed in general.
So I would think if they're allowed in general, or that they should,
Be allowed
Be
in
allowed in
heavy, that's the
heavy.
next one, up.
Yeah.
There should be more intense uses. That's kind of what I was
Yeah.
thinking, so. I mean, like I said, there is one, that mini warehousing, and that one's conditional use in both of the tables, but everything else is mixed up. So if you're okay with those uses being permitted in heavy business, I can just go ahead and switch the chapter 2 table to match the land use matrix as it is right now.
No problem.
Okay.
All right. Our service areas behind front facade and or rear load only adjacent to arterial or collector. So our MF2, which is a little bit heavier density multifamily, abides by that rule. So I was wondering if we should include MF1 in that as well, because you can have some kind of not high rise, but multi-level multifamily in MF1. It's just meant to be a lower density, so there might not be as many buildings. But still, this is things like mechanical equipment, dumpsters, AC units, et cetera, behind the front facade.
okay, so this requirement is in MF2, but not in MF1.
Correct.
I would say yes, because again, that's lesser. I mean,
Yeah, just it's like all of the equipment, like back of house equipment
yeah,
in the back of the house. Although you're probably not gonna find with MF1, if it does get built, those are more like single story duplexes or like 4 squares. So they are typically built like a normal house, not like an apartment complex. But just to kind of give us that extra, blanket, safety blanket that, it's built behind it instead of in front of it.
Yeah.
All right. So building facade design on page 58. This section, as far as what the facade has to look like, It only says MF. I don't know if that was meant to say, both 1 and 2 and imply that, or if it's just supposed to be one or the other. But MF1 does already have architecture standards listed in another section specific to it. So maybe this is just supposed to be for higher density. I believe it's the building facade materials, so using 3 or more. Facades longer than 60 feet have to have visual breaking in materials or bump outs or things like that, which again, you don't typically find in MF1 anyway. But I'll do whatever.
And we already have MF1 defined.
We do, yeah, in the low density residential anti-monotony plans.
So it really almost sounds like this should just be MF1, right?
2.
Or
Yeah,
2,
it's
yes,
one-
yes,
one's
2.
defined.
Yeah. So just some clarity on that one.
I would, I would say, let's make it MF2.
Okay. Next one, there's additional regulations for downtown business architecture. I just want to add another bullet point that any of the downtown business parcels that fall into the local historic district have to utilize the local preservation design guidelines, which right now, all of our DB parcels are in the local historic guidelines or within the local historic district. But that doesn't mean that there might be some that rezone that are outside of that. And they would just have to go by what's in the UDO, whereas the people in the local have to go with both. Or the HBC, whatever they decide. So just a bullet point to add to that there. Any problems with that one? Okay. And then I just had mentioned this before, the MF1 has architecture standards, additional regulations in our low density residential anti-monotony standards. We should probably remove the word low density because not all of these zones are low density. And it's up to the developer to choose what density they want, as long as it doesn't max it out. But like SF4 and RC really aren't low density. They're meant to have more than the other ones. So I'm just taking that out.
Do we even have low density defined anywhere? Is that in our
No.
definitions? I know, so it's like. I don't
No,
know.
it's not. Okay. We'll do that. Right along, folks. All right, I'm at 20 minutes. I said 30. Anti-monotony criteria. This just kind of piggybacks off of the one we just did, but there's a list of criteria of what makes something not monotonous, and it says, including but not limited to. And then at the very end, it says other criteria approved by the planning commission that confirms the house is different. Planning commission doesn't see secondary plats anymore or building permits. So a developer has the choice to do it at secondary phase, or if they're doing custom homes, they can do it with each building permit. And that doesn't come before planning commission, so that needs to be changed to the administrator. Okay. RV storage, our UDO does speak to the standards on RV parking. It's very well written. We should probably add that if an HOA or a covenant disallows that or has different restrictions, that overrules ours as long as it meets or exceeds our restrictions.
Makes sense.
Okay. Landscaping. So I talked with Denise about this earlier. Our landscaping section does not talk about prohibiting invasive species. It only says invasive species don't count towards your landscape credits if they're like existing. So we should probably put some language in there stating invasives are prohibited and that they should reference our tree care manual for improved species list, because that gets updated. I know something like the red maple, we don't allow planting anymore, so we keep that list updated so developers can utilize that, or anybody who wants to plant a tree. All right. Berms are maxed out at 5 feet in their description. So speaking to berms, it says berms shall not exceed 5 feet at the peak. We have some berm requirements that are up to 6 feet. Need to update that. All right. Ooh, signage. All right. So post sign limits in our non-residential zone. So this is institutional, rec, and open space in Ag 1, 2. So the non-residential sign section states that there's a limit on ground signs or freestanding signs to 2. And it says post signs or monument signs. But once you get into the table, the post sign section says limit of 1 per parcel. So that's a ground sign, so it probably needs to be 2. Monument signs are 2 per parcel or per development. So that one should probably be updated unless we only want there to be 1 ground sign per business. Because usually they're at each vehicle entrance. So that's how monument sign has it, is at each vehicle entrance. So. Any issues with updating post sign allowance to 2? And it still has to fit, obviously within all of the stated parameters. Our home occupation permit, so we allow a lot of different types of home occupation. The town does require a permit and an annual registration for it, but that language isn't mentioned in the UDO. I think it's something we've always done, but it's so infrequent, not a lot of people do it, that maybe it was missed. So I'd like to add that to the procedure section of home occupation. All right. Adequate public facilities and infrastructure. So when we have any sort of development where public utilities are going to be turned over to the town, we always go out and do inspections. They're typically bonded. And this has got a pretty good list of all the things that we go out and examine for adequacy, but including the words include but not limited to, in case anything else happens to come up specific to the site that we don't have listed here. All right. We have some language we need to add to our Appendix B plat languages regarding visibility on secondary plats. If you want to go to the page, there's a few sections of it. I know I had missed some of this with drainage before, but this was one I just found. And that's just to ensure that any driveway cuts or entrances, exits, all have a clear line of sight within the subdivision. Okay. The next couple things are about findings of fact. So findings of fact are things that are typically recorded with a parcel or a deed, something like that. BZA deals with those. So we have some inconsistent language. This first one here says disapproval of primary plat. We give the petitioner a written finding of fact. That's not what we do. We do a written notice of disapproval or approval. It's not technically a finding of fact because it's not planning commission, it's not quasi judicial. So 20 and 21, there's just inconsistent language for approving and disapproving primary and secondary plats. To update that language to say written notice. Okay. Same kind of thing, subdivision waivers. So example, when Kyle Smith got his primary approved and we waived the need for the open space requirement. Again, that's something that goes in the primary plat approval sheet that we give them. The UDO states that you're supposed to give them a written findings of fact. Again, that's not what it's called, and it's included in the approval form that they get from us. So just changing that to written determination included on the primary plat approval form. Cool. Let's see. Same thing as 20 and 21 for the minor residential. That clumps primary and secondary approval into one meeting to streamline it for the subdivider, since it's three 3 parcels or less, 3 lots or less. So again, we have written templates for approval, disapproval, not findings of fact. Process chart for zone changes. So there is a bubble on, oh gosh, I don't even know which figure number it is, my apologies. But it's section 4 of the chart. It said when a zone change goes to town council after planning commission, there is an option we currently have that says modify requires PC review, and that's not allowed. Jeff can probably answer this better than I can, but we have the correct text in the UDO, but the visual is incorrect. So we
So
need to,
if we would send a recommendation and then the town would change, the council would change it. This was saying right now that it needs to come back to us, but Jeff's saying that's not legal.
yeah. Jeff, can you kind of explain what that process is, when planning commission gives the recommendations, with or without conditions to town council?
The plan on rezoning only, not on like what we're doing tonight, where we are suggesting changes to the UDO, but on rezones only, the document that you send to the council cannot touch it. The council has a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and that's it. If there's something in it that the council really doesn't like, their only option is to vote it down. So it is they can't even move they could move a comma, but they can't make any substantive changes at all and send it back to you like they could tonight. If we make a recommendation on some of these UDO amendments and they say, well, instead of 5 feet for a setback, let's do 3 feet. Then you can play a little bit of ping pong back and forth with the council, but on rezones, state law doesn't permit that.
Okay, only on reasons. Okay.
Okay, so any issues, we'll just remove that from the chart. Okay. Next, we have accessory dwellings. So these are mother-in-law suites, in a garage or in a detached shed, kind of thing. So
It's
we.
more than shit.
You get what I mean. You hit the shed. So we allow these by right in a few zones, A1, A2, rural res, and SF1. So our larger zones, they are by conditional use in the rest of our residential zoning, which is 2, 3, 4 in RC. So, looking at some of the goals of, our comp plan and things like that, having a variety of different housing is a really important factor in that. And allowing people to do this really kind of opens that door up. If they can't afford to build a house or, whatever it might be, they might, it could be all sorts of stuff. So, I'm thinking it would be a good move to remove the red tape of a conditional use on these additional zones here that don't allow it by right. Knowing that if someone wants to build and or retrofit a building into an accessory dwelling, it does have to fit all of our accessory dwelling standards. It has to meet building code, which is much more strict than if it was just, a shed. And they have to, have proper parking, proper utilities. It has to have the proper setbacks, things of that nature. There's limits on the size that it can be. So I think opening this up, because I've had a lot of calls about this lately. And that's what kind of brought it to my attention when I was like, oh, it's conditional use in kind of the predominant number of zones we have here. 2 and 3 is probably our highest in Pendleton residential zone. So I think that would be a wise move to kind of open that door a little bit for people who might need that.
Maybe like right as opposed to additional.
Yes, just removing some of that tape.
I do remember talking a lot about this one though. I think
Okay.
we were all just a little hesitant just to open it up completely and not have some oversight of it,
Yeah.
at least until we start getting comfortable with what
Yeah.
the results are.
Yeah. I think though, I think you should have the standards that it has to meet are are pretty tight.
Mhm.
And I think that is probably a good way, a good safety net for right now. As far as, allowing it by right. And, it's always something again where we could go back and put conditional use back on it. But I think right now, just having that, it can be restricted for people, but it does have to meet all those standards. It can't cause traffic jams. You can't have a car garage for, an accessory dwelling unit.
So what would they have to do if it's a conditional use? They have to pay a.
Yeah, they have to pay the $400 fee. They have to notice everyone, come to the meeting. And then because it
And they have to
is
pay for
BZA.
they have to pay for the noticing everyone?
Yes.
Mhm.
And then because it is BZA, it would be a finding of fact. They have to wait for it to get reported. And then they would be allowed to do it. Now this does not allow short-term rental by right.
Mhm.
So the transient community of, maybe Airbnb or Verbo, things like that, most zones that is conditional use only. And it is allowed by right, I think, in SF1, maybe. I'd have to take a look at it. But that, if that is a concern of, having people going in and out all the time that don't live here,
I think it was more just us not knowing what we were allowing, because we don't have a lot of
yeah,
history right now. We
Yeah.
don't have people doing it.
Yeah.
But,
I've done a lot of research and I'm looking at this, even just in school, but in San Francisco, there was, a huge housing crisis there. They opened this up and it really helped their community a lot. I know this is not San Francisco, but
Well, but I think it's been a popular topic here, just for elderly care.
yeah,
And to
And
where
lack-
someone can
the
still
lack
have
of
their own
housing.
autonomy
yeah.
as they age,
yeah,
but they don't have to necessarily be
Yeah.
within the house. It also helps for anyone with special need, adult children that can still have some autonomy but need to be close
Yeah.
by.
And I would feel, different about it if it was, if in town we were predominantly zoned, SF1 or rural res, where those are allowed by right. But the majority of our existing zoning has all those additional pieces of red tape that folks have to go through just to get, a mother-in-law
Yeah.
suite.
I really think it was probably more that
Yeah.
we didn't know, we couldn't agree, so we just said, well, let's make it.
And we can change that later.
And we can change it
Yeah.
later, yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way I remember.
Yeah, I don't remember any
And-
other strong feelings
Yeah,
on
other
it.
than we just.
We needed to move on,
Yeah.
make a decision,
Yeah.
move on, we'll go back
Yeah.
Yeah.
to shore and get
Yeah.
a, if need
Okay.
be.
And I think too, especially now that the town has, has iWork, keeping track of all the permits, and stuff like that, so we know, it's not just somebody went and put in a sink and now they have a, sink and a toilet, and now they have an accessory dwelling,
Yeah.
you have to
Yeah.
get permits for all
Yeah.
that, and we go, oh, are you making a housing space here? So it's
Yeah.
easier to keep track of it.
Yeah, okay.
Which I think helps considerably. So, Any thoughts or moving to permit? Okay. All right, last three. Ooh, darn, I'm over by 3 minutes. So microbrewery, we allow that in quite a few areas in our zoning. We don't have a definition for it. So I Googled it and Merriam-Webster says a small brewery making specialty beer in limited quantities.
So it's just beer.
It appears so. I don't know.
I guess that would be distilleries for all the other stuff.
If it was like liquor or something,
Yeah.
yeah, like vodka or something, gin.
Moondrops?
So I thought maybe it would be good to have that in there. Some of our uses in the chapter 2 tables, we don't necessarily have definitions for, but they're pretty self-explanatory. But if somebody comes in an area and they clearly have a brewery, and they're trying to fit somewhere that allows microbrewery because they want to get around the red tape or something, might be good to have a definition. We have a definition for brewery, so.
Would it matter if, because I know in Indiana specifically, if they don't have food, children are allowed, so would that need to be a requirement to make it an adult business? If it did not have food?
I don't know if we can regulate that. That might be like health department or
Okay.
state, or what is that, alcohol, tobacco, fire?
ATF.
ATF, yeah. That might be more their purview.
Okay, because I was just thinking when we were talking about it earlier that all of those said restaurant with alcohol.
Mhm.
But I
Yeah.
see a lot of these breweries that pop up and a lot of them will have a small kitchen so that they
Yeah.
can be family friendly.
Right. Well, I know in the definition for brewery, it's winery brewery. And it's like distilling or creating the product on site, but may also include accessory structures or accessory uses within, like a restaurant. So I would imagine this would be just the
Just
beverage.
the beer part.
But I don't think it would necessarily exclude that if there was room for it. I think it's just a small scale production where everything that they create, they sell in-house and they don't distribute like typical
Yeah.
breweries do.
Mhm.
So if we want to put that on hold and I can do some more research, I'm happy to do that, but I figured we might want to,
Yeah.
because we have brewery, we should probably tell people what microbrewery means,
Yes,
so
although small and limited quantities is.
it's a subjective.
subjective.
How about I look into that one more? No one has come and asked for a microbrewery, but I want one.
But yeah. I know, I just saw
So-
that Indiana City closed. It's
Uh-huh.
like, oh God, I wish I knew someone that could buy that. Put it across the street.
Yeah.
But that'd be awesome.
Come on
But
down.
I know that there is some like language in brewery and microbrewery too, because like Sun King hit their limit, so they had to open all these littler microbreweries that were just doing limited. They couldn't distribute anything from there.
Right, yeah,
So I think it would be great to have something written like that.
okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
I'll refine that and bring it back. Either next month, or if we don't have any agenda items, I'll just move it to.
And
another date.
maybe talking about no distribution.
Yeah.
And adding that to the definition. Is there?
Indiana
I
state
believe there are
guidelines?
Indiana state guidelines for what constitutes a microbrewery, right?
I believe so.
And so could we just say that it reflects the state statute for what constitutes a microbrewery?
We can cross-reference, but that's when they started popping up because Indiana had passed law.
Right.
And so I think we probably should. look
Okay,
to
let's just
see
do
what
that.
our needs.
Yeah, we should be consistent with, and then if that changes, we should automatically. change it
Yep,
as well.
I will look
Okay.
into that. Another definition, we don't have definition for truck stop. And I have gotten a few calls about a truck stop in various places. To me, it seems like that is a heavier use than just your typical gas station. Maybe a gas station has a car wash, but typically a truck stop is something that has showers, maybe a sit-down restaurant, maybe even an arcade of some sort. And it's typically a lot bigger and heavier, has scales, and also offers different types of fuel. So this was something I didn't know if we left it out, because if it's not explicitly defined, we don't have to allow it. But as our I-69 quadrant continues to develop, it might be good to have some parameters set down so people don't say, oh, I'm building a gas station, and it actually is a truck stop. We don't have any delineation between the two, or zones where those would be permitted. Even by conditional use, I think is the best. way.
Yeah, condition,
Conditional use,
For
for sure, for
sure.
everything, but
Yeah.
then
only, and would that be heavy?
I would say
business?
heavy business and light heavy industrial.
correct, and I'm trying to remember how much of that we even have. And you wouldn't do that anywhere where there's not
And
large,
interchange,
yeah,
yeah. So
that's
we
very
have,
few, so that
we have
limits.
heavy business at where the McDonald's is, that area, but they're very small parcels. This was when we were transferring our old zoning to new zoning.
I can even see a truck getting,
Yeah, yeah.
lots
So
of
that-
trucks getting in there, the way it's designed.
That area has the most heavy business. It doesn't fit the acreage size, but again, it was the closest translating to what was there with our old code. The only place with heavy industrial is Tractor Supply and a few down there. And then we do have, we have heavy business out on 13 where Indie Boat Co is. So
Okay.
as it sits right now,
We
there's
don't
not
have
a lot of options. They'd have to go through rezone to get anything going.
I don't know if we need to define,
Yeah, and that's, I mean, this was just something I noticed. It's completely up to you, but
because they would,
the only thing is that if in the future, if there is a heavy business somewhere or a light industrial
Or if it's within a 2-mile radius.
or that, yeah.
Or,
And a company is there, say it's a light industrial and it's, you know, like an LKQ, but nicer, just the building itself, and they leave, by right, you know, a truck stop can come into those areas, so,
okay.
you know, it's
Putting
just
a
kind of,
definition in, I don't think that hurts anything to put a
Okay.
definition in.
I think I have a
I know what
dictionary.com
zone.
defines as
Yeah,
right there, a gas station usually at the side of a major
Oh.
highway where truck drivers stop for fuel, often including restaurants, sleeping and showering, and a store selling basic items.
but we don't have, again, we need to say it should just be heavy business, and industrial, and light industrial, by conditional use, by conditional use only.
Okay, yep, I can do that. Are we okay with the definition as stated from dictionary.com?
Covers everything I've seen in the
Yeah.
truck stop.
Yeah,
Maybe I could have like scales on there, because they usually have a scale, and that's a whole other implement for the trucks. Parking
And
areas,
mechanical needs or
mechanical needs.
mechanical
That's true.
services.
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, so I'll add mechanical services, truck overnight parking, and, what else? Is that it?
Could we say could include, I mean, because.
Yeah,
it-
could include, okay,
Because if they said, well, we don't have overnight parking, so it's not a truck stop.
okay,
May.
okay, that may include.
That may
whatever.
include, yeah.
Okay. Let's make sure we have conditional. Yeah,
Mhm.
so by
Yes.
conditional use
Yes.
only, heavy business, light industrial, heavy industrial. Good. Everybody good with that?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Do we
I-
have truck stop mentioned anywhere?
No, but we have
Okay.
gas station all over the place.
Yeah,
And
okay.
I've been getting a lot of gas stations slash, you know, possible truck stop
We
calls.
should have had computers so we could do key finds
Yeah.
on a word.
Oh, yeah, control F.
Yeah.
That's my
control
best
F,
friend.
Yes.
that's-
Best thing ever.
That is my best friend in this document.
Yep.
Um,
Cross-reference.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is just I went through every page of the UDO, so I still have a chunk of things I want to discuss with Jeff, but these were kind of the most immediate ones that I could come up with. But there is a variety of scrivener's errors, just commas, periods, cutoffs, capitalizations. We did have some, you know, representative or his, her designee. I just took out the engendering terms and put they. Other places where we said planning department, town staff, planning staff, all of those fall under the definition of the administrator in the UDO. So that's the word we need to continue using. So
Mhm.
updating those as well. There's a couple of them here and there. So that's all I, with the scrivener's errors. So, all right, so looks like we are good to pass as amended, or as, yes, as written, and discussed, except for 26 microbrewery, we will leave out for next time. So I think, yeah, you make a motion.
Yeah.
Motion to accept.
Second?
I second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. We'll take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed.
All opposed.
All right, that's all I've got. So we'll be back in
Okay.
April 5th.
Do we have anything for next month? Do you know yet?
No, there's nothing, well, no, let me reference. So I was able to get a hold of the Begley property owner to discuss with him reverting back to ag. He wanted to talk with his realtor and his lawyer, but he seemed pretty, indifferent about it. So I think we're gonna move forward with that. South Madison is on board with their parcel, and they also support the rezone of the large parcel back to ag. I'm not,
Lisa's out.
on 67 by the ball fields, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'm gonna be calling the realtor either this week or next week, just to see if he's called her and spoken with her. But she was, kind of one of the people that was like, hey, this maybe should go back, it would make it easier to sell, and it also gives planning commission that full view of what might go there in the future.
Yeah.
There was really good conditions on it, don't get me wrong, but.
No,
But they fit the,
Yeah,
It was condition specific to that project.
yeah, that project
Not just in
precisely.
general.
yeah,
So I'm also gonna be working with Jeff on, possibly if something like this happens again, having a clawback clause on it, where if that developer does not purchase as it was, presented, Roush Coleman or whoever it might be, it automatically reverts back to the zoning that it was. I don't know any legal on that right now. I don't know if it, if that's
And
even okay, but I've heard of it, so.
And when you're looking into that, if you could see if there's a time frame as well for, and I believe we put those conditions in the past, but when we pass something, but then say a developer waits,
Mhm.
10 years to
Yeah.
develop.
well, because we had that out on 132.
Sure did.
Well, we have
Yeah,
limits
And
on
things changed.
And
on,
then
the
change.
primary and secondary plats that they have to be acted upon, whether that's going into secondary or pulling your first building permit, I don't see why, if you don't move on it in 5 years, we're taking it back to what it was, or whatever time
Or you
it
have
is.
Okay.
Yeah, do some, yeah.
Where we might not then have to worry about, like that could be a rule within the UDO instead of having it as a condition on every rezone that could fall back.
Because standards change.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I know we
yeah,
had,
so it's like that,
with
that's the perfect
few
example.
places.
It's changed and we didn't have an opportunity
right,
to do anything about it.
right. Yeah, it could be something like if the primary plat is not filed within or a site development plan, depending on if it's residential or commercial, within a certain amount of time. I think it was actually.
So we need to put that in the UDO?
I believe so. Jeff, do you think that would be a UDO rule or something we'd have to do as a condition on every possible rezone?
I think we can specifically say that that is a possibility, that we could do the conditional rezone and it could be in the UDO itself, just so someone can't later say, well, you outstepped your authority on that. I'd want something specifically to reference, because state code doesn't contemplate that, but it talks about reasonable conditions. The time limit can be a reasonable condition.
Yeah.
I see no harm with putting it in the UDO.
Okay, so we'd put it in the UDO, but also include it on every rezone as like a condition going forward.
Yeah, if that's what we want, sure.
Okay,
Yeah, I'd like to see, and then, yeah, then there's no question about it.
Mhm.
People would know that going in.
and probably what we would do is whatever time frame we agree on that would go in the UDO would be what is recommended at every proposed rezone, would be
Yeah.
consistent with what's in that UDO.
Mhm. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome. Bang the gavel. We're done.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.